Hello, my name is Cintia, and this is Kaleidoscope, an educational podcast hosted by me and my friends Edmond and Joshua. Our podcast is sort of a one-stop shop for everything career related with the help of industry insiders. We present you with a broad spectrum of professions with as many perspectives through personal testimonies as the colors of a kaleidoscope. Today, we have Dr. Stefanie Boyer with us, so thank you very much for joining us today, and welcome to Kaleidoscope.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here today. I've been looking forward to this since the last time we talked and before that.
That's amazing. We as well. So as you know that we start always with the 10 questions that are same for every episode. Can we get started?
Yes, let's do it.
Awesome, amazing. So beach or sightseeing?
Oh, yes, I remember this beach for sure.
Okay. Books or movies?
Definitely movies.
Oh.
There's so many books in the semester, definitely movies.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Vanilla, and it goes with everything. You can just mix it with whatever you want and make it anything.
Yeah, that is very, very true. Favorite country to visit?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
And I teach a class there on sustainability. And so we go into the rainforest and we do zip lining and we ride horses and we pick the cherries off of the coffee trees. And so it's so much fun. And when we go there, it's usually in January, so it's very cold here in Rhode Island. So just lots of fun memories there. But I like traveling all over.
That's
so it's
amazing.
kind of hard to say.
Yeah, Costa Rica sounds lovely.
Yeah, do you surf by any chance?
I do. I don't do it well, but
Do you surf, Josh?
No, but I think Costa Rica is quite known for its surfing, isn't it?
oh, it is. It is. I mean, I am not at that level, but I'm more like small waves, longboard.
For sure, a higher level than me. I've never tried surfing.
I tried it when I was a
Try it.
kid.
It's fun.
It was atrocious.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that when somebody wants to become a professor, that's not what they think, that they'll be going up, in Costa Rica and ziplining.
No,
It's really, really, really interesting. What is your favorite song? It's a hard one.
Oh, song. I think Three Little Birds
That's a great
by Bob Marley.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
It's so peaceful.
Yeah.
Just, we have hammocks at our house. So we put the hammocks out when the weather's nice, and I just like sit in the hammock, hang out, and I make like a pina colada or something like that, and I drink it and I pretend I'm in a tropical place.
There you go.
That sounds
Also,
amazing.
also a great song for Costa Rica, I can imagine.
Yeah.
That's true.
Amazing. Stranded on an island, what are 3 things that you take with you?
I think I remember it. Let's see. I would probably have my family. I would just bring them into whatever mess I'm in. We'd need to have water, so some kind of like a water purifier, and like some kind of tool that can help you, like one of those multi-utility tools, I think, something like that.
Nice. If you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would you eat?
Oh, that's easy. Sushi.
Sushi.
Yeah,
I love sushi. It's so good.
I agree with you on that one.
I do too.
If this question was asked to me, that'd be my answer too.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. There's just so much more
Yeah,
to
you're
like.
too French for that.
Yeah.
Raclette.
Yeah, I'd probably choose raclette. But yeah,
What would you choose?
raclette. It's my favorite French dish. It's very simple. You've got like a little machine that has like resistances. Yeah, right. Like that just heats up like sort of a toaster, and you put like a little sort of thing with cheese on it. It heats up the cheese. You have a potato, the cheese melts, and you pour it over the potato. It's crazy simple, but I could eat it every day. And I had it at lunch, actually.
Yeah,
There
today.
Yeah, just to show my dedication to raclette.
Yeah.
I mean, anything with cheese on it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
Yeah.
just good. It's just good.
It for sure is. What is your favorite movie?
Oh man, I really like Matt Damon, so probably anything that he's in, I like it. Like all the series that he did, the Born Identity series, all of those.
Nice, very interesting. Book you think that everyone should read?
Oh, okay. Well, I like The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday.
Yes, okay.
I tried to get my daughter to read it. She does not like it at all. but she's 11, so maybe that's the problem.
Yeah.
That was my next
But
question.
It's so great. So he's a Stoic philosopher, and his whole thing is, typically we all have challenges, and instead of being a victim and being vulnerable, we can instead use that challenge that we have as the way that we're successful instead of the obstacle that we have to fail, right? So it's so easy to make an excuse, but it's much harder to just, take that challenge and use it to succeed instead.
Are you a big follower of the Stoic philosophy?
I really got into it a little bit in college, and then when Ryan Holiday started writing his books, then I got into it a little bit more. Yeah. But I mean, I find it interesting, and I like that, being able to kind of, take charge and accountability for your life and what happens to you.
Yeah, I like it too.
Yeah, that makes sense. 3 people you would have dinner with, dead or alive?
Let's see. Well, as a technology developer, I'd say probably someone related to technology, maybe like a Bill Gates. I think we talked about this, right? We love Oprah, right? Like she likes to give everything away. Yes. I want to be able to do that one day. You get a car, you get a car. And then of course, Richard Branson, right? Entrepreneur, like he has so many interesting PR strategies that have succeeded. I mean, it would be fascinating talking to all of those folks.
I imagine that you have a very unique, understanding of his PR strategies, especially given your profession. It's very, very different when you have that level of understanding of, what is going on and, behind the scenes. So as our first question, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us, what do you do?
Sure. Well, I'm Dr. Stefanie Boyer. I run the sales program at Bryant University. Bryant University is located in Rhode Island. Rhode Island is about, 45 minutes or so where I am, 45 minutes or so from Boston. So that gives you an idea, the northeast of the United States. And I also recently, I guess within the last 3 years, 2.5 years, developed with a team a software program that we offer to students everywhere, any country, free to teach them how to have better conversations using the sales process. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. Develop technology, teach sales classes, do sales research, and a lot of service related to sales. Everything that can help to try to elevate the sales profession.
It sounds like you stay busy. That's what that truly sounds like. So there's clearly a passion for sales. Was that something that you had in your childhood? And what did you think as a child? What were you going to do in life?
I did think I was going to be a pediatrician at first. I had lots of different ideas of what I might do. And then as I was in college, I realized that I was like, oh my gosh, I have to stay in school so long if I'm a doctor. I'm never going to move on with my life. And so I was like, okay, I definitely don't want to do that. But I did always have a little bit of a passion for sales. I just didn't know it. Like when I was a child, I was a Girl Scout. And as part of the Girl Scout programs, you had to try to sell cookies. And so there was this, I remember they had this little like stuffed otter doll, like stuffed animal, and I wanted it so bad, but you had to sell like 300 boxes of cookies. And I just went around the entire neighborhood. I think I ended up like 2 neighborhoods away from where I live, and I was just walking around to every single door. I didn't care. I really wanted that. So it was very goal oriented.
Did you sell the 300 boxes of cookies?
Of course I did. Yes. Yeah, I didn't come home until I got to that.
You got that.
Sometimes it's kind of awkward.
Do you still have the otter?
I did. And, it was funny because a lot of my friends, their parents would just take the order catalog to work. Mm-hmm. And the people at work would buy it, and help them out. But my parents never did that. And at first I was like, gosh, this isn't fair. Why don't my parents go sell the cookies for me? But I realize now is, that wouldn't have taught me anything, and it wouldn't have helped develop me. But I've had a lot of different career paths. So I worked at United States Customs Service. When I was in college, I also was a firefighter. And so I had all these different kinds of paths. And when I was an undergrad, I studied psychology and criminology. That was the degree I actually ended up getting. It started out, I tried to be a little pre-med, and that's when I had that realization that I'd be in school too long, because you had medical school for 4 years after, and then you had your residency. But then I ended up getting my PhD, which I got my master's, and that took 2 years in business because I didn't study business before. Yeah. And then I had another 4 years in the PhD program. So I ended up having a lot of school anyways. Yeah. You know, it just ended up happening. It was meant to be, I guess.
Yeah. So with all of those paths that you took, was there one decisive moment, one moment that you can pinpoint and say, yeah, that's when I made the decision of doing what I do now? Or was it just... I can actually. So when I was, it launched this path. So when I was an undergraduate, I was training to go to the Olympic trials in javelin. So I threw the javelin, and I was really good at it. And I never did it in high school. I just did it in college. And it was really exciting. But then I ended up hurting my back. And I had always been a really good student before that. I had a 4.0 at University of South Florida where I was. And 4.0, it's out of 4. Yeah. Oh, you're disconnected. Here we go. No, it's...
So anyways, I had a 4.0. And that's the one thing that I could really do is I could really do well when it came to school. But I hurt my back, and I was in the doctor often, and the doctor was like, you have the back of a 70-year-old woman, and I was 20 at that time. So it was really hard to hear. And I wanted to try to go to graduate school instead. So I was like, okay, this isn't going to be my path. I had to do something called red shirt my senior year, and that just basically means you can't compete in that season. But if you do a red shirt, then when you're in a graduate program, you can compete. So I decided to start a graduate program after that, but I couldn't sit down for the test. And so that was just really a really hard thing. For the test, it's like a 3-hour test that you have to sit down, you have to take it. And my back hurt so bad, I couldn't really do that, and I couldn't focus. So I failed the test. Wow. And, it was really hard. I tried to apply to get into USF to do my master's, but I didn't even get a high enough score to get into USF to do that. So they said, we're sorry. And I was supposed to work for a man in the marketing department, or in the management department, named Marvin Carlins. So he did all this crazy consulting for a bunch of airlines. He's a great storyteller. He's written so many books. He's done a lot of poker books too, which is really interesting. He's been on the Travel Channel. So I was very excited to be able to work for him and help him teach his classes. But I couldn't get into the program because I failed the GMAT. I think the minimum score you had to get was 500, and I got 480. And so USF was like, you can't get in. Yeah. You have to have the minimum score. And I'm like, how did I have a 4.0? I have the highest grades you can possibly get, and I can't pass the test. Can't you let me in? And so they said that I couldn't. And so over the summer I had graduated, and I was working. I was doing some grant writing, and I was going to visit my friend in Orlando from where my parents lived in Florida. It was 2.5, 3 hours away. So I was on the way over there. I was about 10 minutes from seeing my friend, 10 minutes. And I get a call from Dr. Carlins, the one that I was going to work for. And I think it was July 1st at that point. And he called me. He was like, hey, are you still going to come work for me? And then I had to tell him, I said, no, I didn't pass the test. I'm sorry. I really wanted the opportunity. I just couldn't do it. And he said, look, I'll talk to the dean. Go schedule the test. You need to get it in by July 3rd, I think he said. You got to do it. And so at that moment, I felt like I knew my future was behind this decision that I was going to make. And I could either turn around immediately, schedule to take the test on the 3rd of July, and go home and just practice sitting for the test and getting through it. Or I could go visit my friend for a little bit and then, hang out, maybe the next day come back and get ready and go try to take the test again. So I felt like I knew, it was 100%. If I didn't go right then, I wouldn't pass it. So I called my mom. I turned around. I was like, please help me. This was back in 2002. So we didn't have smartphone or anything. I didn't have a computer with me that I could just look everything up so easily. We all had desktop computers then. So she went and she found me. She got one slot left. It was on July 3rd. I think it was July 4th. It was like the last opportunity. And I went home and I would sit and I would just practice trying to take the test. And I went in to take it. They tell you your score as soon as you're done. It was so distracting. It was very difficult. Like I could hear the blinds moving. There was like trucks driving by. It was just hard to focus because my back hurt so much too. And they gave me the score and I got exactly 500. And so the professor was like, okay, so he talked to the people and he helped me to get in so I could work for him. And he said that when he had gone to Princeton, something similar had happened to him. Is that he got into Princeton, but he didn't pass the standardized test that they had to have. And so a professor kind of took him under the wing and helped to get him in because he was already doing so well. It's just that he didn't test well. And so this was my opportunity, and it completely shifted my whole life because I'd kind of given up on myself and given up on that because I was like, oh, well, I didn't pass the test, so that's it, you know? So that definitely, it shifted. I did my MBA. I found the PhD program. I had to take the GMAT again, and I had to get a much higher score to get into the PhD program. But by then, my back was feeling better, and I could do it. And then next thing you know, I did a research paper on sales training, and I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my passion. I want to help people learn how to do this more effectively.
Yeah. And what was it about doing that research paper that sort of sparked that this is my passion, this is what I want to do?
Well, I'd always loved talking to people, and I'd always loved selling, and I had always loved training people how to do things. So like when I was throwing javelin, I would go teach some of the law enforcement officers how to throw the javelin. I always thought like, I'm going to go be a javelin coach. That was my thing. I was like, I'm going to go to Olympics. I'm going to be a javelin coach. Because I love that. So I love teaching and training. I love sales. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of research out there that tells us how people can learn better. And so I was doing a meta-analysis. The meta-analysis was, it was like 1,300 articles and 600 dissertations on the topic of self-directed learning. And so self-directed learning is how you as a learner, you have some control over your learning environment. And by doing that, then you learn better. You are happier learning. You have better performance outcomes. You're more excited about learning. You're more satisfied with the process of it. And so I wanted to dig into that because when I had sold, I noticed that sometimes I did really well and sometimes I was terrible. And when I was terrible, I would feel terrible. You know, like I wouldn't want to talk to anybody. I wouldn't want to report to my manager. I would just want to go like hide in the earth or something, you know, like just bury me. I don't want to talk to anybody. And I was like, you know, can I help people to not feel like that? That would be really great if we could kind of break down how you can sell better. And then like you can just be happier when you're doing it and be more successful too. Yeah. So that was really that passion of like, oh my gosh, we have a way that we can actually help right now.
Yeah. And do you find that the psychology had anything to do with sort of that initial love for sales?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That I think that's where like the psychology and like the marketing that I had just been studying really came together. But sales really has so much to do with psychology. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Are you studying psychology at all?
No, but I did. So I went to Concordia in Montreal, and I did sociology there. So it's different from the sense of what you're studying, as opposed to studying the mind or the individual. You're studying how groups interact. But I found that very interesting, studying sociology and then sort of applying it to real world. You know, understanding how groups interact and all of that. But yeah, that's exactly why I asked. I feel like even now in the business degree, you see where sociology, the theory that I learned in sociology, can be applied into business and corporate world and even sales and all of these things. So, yeah.
All of my electives in high school were psychology related.
Really?
Yeah, I actually was really interested, but I sort of went down the same path that, well, if I were to become a licensed therapist, then it would take just too many years of my life. And then now I want to do the same thing just in finance. So it's probably going to take just as many years. But yeah, all of my electives were psychology related in high school.
It's so relevant. But the one thing that I really love about sales is everywhere. You can study anything with sales and it goes well. You know, like if you're really interested in languages, you can study languages. If you're really interested in writing, you can study writing, and all of these things, finance or accounting or engineering, like all of these things pair really, really, really well with sales because sales is part of everything. So I love it.
And did you go into a corporate field, or did you go straight into educating and sort of educating in sales?
Sure. You know, I sold financial services, but I always was in school. So I would be in school, but then I would have several jobs to help support me or pay for college or, you know, whatever it was that I was trying to do. But I never took a break from academia. And so as soon as I finished with my PhD, I went on interviews. So I interviewed at 26 different schools to try to find the right match. And then I went right into my job here at Bryant. And so now that I'm here, you know, I have this, but then I also do consulting. So like I'll train companies how to sell. We'll host like a symposium, or we'll do a company-wide training, or do like webinars. And so we do some kind of training like that, or I'll help people figure out their sales strategy and do some like coaching and mentoring. So there's still some of that going. And then as far as like selling, we have a sponsorship program at the university. And so I sell that to companies. And then of course with Rainmakers, the only way that we can actually make it work is by getting companies to pay money so that we can pay the developers. So I'm still doing selling jobs, even though my main job is to teach people how to sell.
That's a nice thing that I've noticed about education or becoming a professor. You have that opportunity to sort of keep selling in many other avenues, whereas I feel like if you were tied down by a corporate, 9 to 5, you wouldn't have the same ability to do all these different things. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, it's true. You know, when you're a professor, you never have a break.
Yeah.
You know, you think like, oh, this is such a great job. Like it's low stress and you have all these like holidays that are off, and that's wonderful. But as a professor, part of your job is to research, and the research process takes a lot of time. You have to submit an article, and then you have to wait for feedback, and then you have to make changes. And, you know, every 3 months you're getting like more changes you have to make on that one article. So you're trying to remember what you even wrote about at that time and fix it. And so there's always a stream of things that you have to work on. There's always service responsibilities. Teaching is only parts of the year. But, you know, when a lot of people see faculty, they're like, oh, you just teach. Even my husband thinks that. He's like, oh, you're just teaching,
Right.
you know, you're off now. But then the research part is a lot of work. So that's like, you never feel like you're done and you can just take a break, because there's always a list of things that you really should be doing.
Yeah.
But when you have a 9 to 5 job, some of those jobs, when you clock out, you're done.
Yeah.
A lot more now. There's emails and stuff that you really need to check. But I think I see a lot of people, I see professors, so they'll have like a sales job and they're also teaching at the same time. So I am seeing more people doing that too.
Yeah. And so obviously you must have seen throughout your career a lot of different salesmen and women. What do you think are the common characteristics of a good salesman, and compared to the ones of what makes a good salesman and what makes a bad salesman in your opinion?
Sure. I think as far as being good or being bad, I think they have some commonality. So if you look at attitude, someone who has a very positive attitude, they have a willingness to learn, they're grateful for feedback, that person is going to do really well. That person that wants to learn, when they get feedback and they're like, well, help me understand this. How can I fix this? And they really want to get better and better. That person is going to do really well. If they're self-directed, so I told you about self-directed learning. You can have self-directed learning as a training program, and then you can have self-directedness as a trait. So people that are self-directed end up actually making a lot more money. So we did a study, and we were looking at salesmen, and we were saying, why is it that some people, when they start making six figures, so when they hit 100,000 or more, they start to relax. They go to the golf course and they're drinking wine and they're just kind of like coasting. But then there's this other group of people that it doesn't matter how much money they make, they're still working really hard. They want to have access to all the latest information. They're gonna just grind, I guess you could say. Those people are self-directed, so it doesn't matter, how high they achieve. They always want to make sure that they are at the cutting edge and that they know everything that they need to know to be successful and to serve their customers. So that self-directedness is really important. Sometimes the things that work, sometimes you can be a lone wolf and that works, but it's not very good for the rest of the group. So it's much better when you have a team of people that help and support each other than you have that lone wolf syndrome, but sometimes it can actually work. And then the attitude part that doesn't work is just kind of the opposite of that, like someone who's cynical or someone who's negative. That doesn't work. If you get too caught up in the negativity, if you can't recover from that, then it's going to be very hard for you to be in sales. So like if you have a bad call, how resilient are you to say, well, I'm on to the next one? Because I know that it's just a matter of getting to enough of the right people that it may not be me. It just could be not the right time for that person, or maybe that person was having a bad day. So how much can you really rationalize that? That's going to help you to be really successful too. And like a know-it-all is not going to be very good in sales.
Yeah.
So I've heard some people talk about sort of the sales gene, right? So someone that's going to just be a natural, and sales isn't really something that you can learn. It's either something that you have that gene, or you don't. Obviously, as a sales teacher, I would assume that you don't agree with that, but to what extent do you agree and to what extent do you disagree?
I think there are some people that have some natural tendencies that make it easier for them to be in some sales roles. If you're very comfortable around people and it's easy for you to have a conversation with them, then it's going to be easier for you in some sales roles where you have to start conversations with people. If you don't like talking to people and you don't like having conversations, or then it's going to be harder for you. You can still find success. You just have to find the right sales role for you. So I think you have potential, right? So you have characteristics that give you potential. But then if you're not going to work hard, if you're not going to learn the process, it's great if you can talk to people. You can build rapport all day. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to close a sale. So you have to have some tenacity, you have to have some drive, you have to have some motivation. But there's that process that works. And the process, as long as you follow it, you're going to have more success. And so like, even if you don't want to go into sales, just learning that process helps you when you're in a job interview because you're selling yourself, or if you're asking for a promotion because you're trying to sell why you should be paid more money. If you're a politician, it doesn't matter. The sales skills can help you anywhere, and anybody can learn them if they want to.
What about misconceptions about sales? I feel like that at least when I speak to people my age and we talk about undergraduate students, when you say like, do you want to go into marketing? Yeah, sure. Do you want to go into sales? I don't know. Why is that? What are the misconceptions that do you think that is stopping people from entering sales?
Well, I think that's it. It's that misconception of what sales really is. So as you know, we train people to sell at a high level. And to me, sales is all about helping people. And if you're not helping people, then you're not doing it right. But most people don't think that that's what sales is. Most people think about sales and they think about an experience they had with somebody that was trying to sell them something that they didn't want, or that they
Yeah.
didn't need, or they were trying to take advantage of them. So in every profession, you have somebody that's not doing it very well. And if you have enough of those people, then, you know, you just have that one experience. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's sales. That's not for me. Right? Because you don't see yourself trying to take advantage of people. You don't see yourself trying to talk somebody into something that they don't want, or being pushy or rude or aggressive. And if you think that that's what sales is, then you're like, oh yeah, I'm definitely not doing that. But once the students take the sales class and then they realize what it actually is, then they realize that the world runs because of sales. The entire supply chain is held together because of salespeople, right? You need those skills. That job is really important. And if you have a very good salesperson, maybe the salesperson helps you find the school that's the perfect fit for you, or helps you find the outfit that you feel great in all the time, or helps you get that car that you really needed, and gets you the financing options that you wanted, or whatever it is. If you work with a salesperson that actually helps you, you love that person. You know, if you see them at the grocery store, then you're like, you know, you're very excited to see them because they helped you. So we just have to get students to understand that sales is really about helping people. And if you're not doing it that way, then you're doing it wrong, and stop and learn how to do it the right way.
I can definitely attest to that before I have taken sales class and understood what it truly means on a high level. When somebody said sales, you know what came to my mind? When you go to the United States and you go inside of a mall and you see the kiosk and they're trying to sell you a flat ironer or some kind of hair product, and you're 3 stores down already and they're still following you with that flat ironer in their in their hand. That's exactly what comes to my mind when I think about sales. And it definitely is very, very true that taking a sales class can change completely your perception.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I don't like that either. I know when I see those people, I'm like, don't make eye contact, don't do it, you know, because I'm like, I don't want that thing. And then they're just trying to push it on you because they're incentivized to sell that. And no one's telling them, hey, you got to talk to the customer, and, you know, who is even a good fit based on who's walking by. They could certainly, and maybe we need to do a campaign like that so that we no longer have the kiosk people that are damaging the reputation of sales. We do a training. It's like, hey, here's how you can help people improve the sales profession and win more sales, you know, by following the sales process.
And so, obviously, you talked about this misconception of sales and how you need to have that desire to help people. Do you think the students that come into that field, do you think most of them know that? Or do you think some of them go into that field completely misunderstanding what sales is about?
Well, I mean, there are about 100, 150 students that go through the sales program here every year. And does everybody get the message in my class? I hope so. I hope that they've gotten the message. But there are a ton of students that are graduating from here that have not taken a sales class. So they might be basing their perception of what sales is based on movies like The Boiler Room, or, you know, Glenn Ross, or The Wolf of Wall Street. Right. And so that we're really affected by the media that's out there. Right. And they probably are going in not knowing what sales is really about. And I guess at that point, it really depends on the manager. But most sales programs, I think here, worldwide, I think they try to teach that sales is, you know, you need to be ethical, and it's about helping people, not just persuasion strategies to get people to do what you want them to do, but persuasion strategies to help people make decisions that are going to help them.
And do you think that's always been the case, this sort of mentality among salespeople, or is there really a reason that we have that sort of, or like the average person has that image of sales? Do you think it was like that in the past? How do you think sales changed, let's say, in the past 20 years?
It has evolved. Yeah, you know, we had that snake oil salesperson. Yeah. Right? And so you always had that. I think you're always going to have some people that are just up to no good, no matter what, in every profession. But I think in the last like 20 to 30 years, there has been a shift of really focusing on being more ethical, doing the right thing by the customer. And I think really what happened is that you look at the data and you see, who has the most sales, who has the most loyal customers, who has the most success. Those are the people that are actually making an impact, that are helping. And I mean, if you're not helping somebody, why would they come back and continue doing business with you? They won't. So I think over time, as we have access to more data and more information, the strategies that work, they start to rise to the top. And I think that's what it's about, is we're realizing, nobody wants to be sold, but everybody wants to buy something. And so we have to be able to help people to make those decisions in a way where we don't feel crummy about ourselves either, right? Because I don't think any of my students want to go into a sales role where they're like, chasing people down and trying to manipulate them.
More on, I guess, more specific group of people and misconceptions. I know you're very passionate about women in sales. So what do you think? Is it underrepresentation, or do we just choose not to go into sales?
Well, that's a good question. If you look at business programs in general, you see fewer women are in the business programs, but it's hard to get the women in. But once they get in, then they do really well. So typically the top performers in the sales competition are women. They're the ones that make it to the semifinal rounds. They're the ones that are featured on the stage. Usually they're usually performing really well. I think that's because they're great listeners and they have higher levels of empathy, which make them very strong communicators. And so, you see them performing well when they get into sales after they've graduated as well. So they do well in the competitions. They do well when they're actually in the sales role. And it's just really a matter of getting them into the class so that they can see they could be great at that. And it's really that misperception. So a lot of sales job positions in the past would say something like, you have to be hungry, you eat what you kill kind of mentality. And women are like, I'm all set. Like, that is not for me. I don't care about going to, the football game. I don't care about this. And so I think organizations are now trying to make the environment more suitable for everybody. Not just that like really aggressive environment that some men thrive in. There's a lot of men that don't thrive in that environment either. So I think that organizations are starting to open their eyes and realizing that there's like so many different ways you can sell. And it really depends on like your industry and who the buyer is, and who your sales team is as well. And so they have to kind of mix it up to find a better solution really for the workers.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense, right? I mean, you're going to sell to everybody, right? So why wouldn't everybody? I mean, you're going to sell to different personalities.
They need the representation.
So you need to represent those different personalities as well in your sales team.
Absolutely.
I assume.
What do you think the future looks like for women in sales?
It looks really bright. The future for women, women are performing well. And I think if the companies can create opportunities for women to sell where they have flexibility, so that they can kind of, manage a family at home if they want to have some of that responsibility, and they can have some autonomy on, how much they want to travel, how much can they work from home, how much do they have to come into the office. I think this is all going to help. So the more flexible the work environment is, I think the more possibilities there are for women in those sales roles.
And then if we could just backtrack a little bit, because this self-directed learning really stuck with me. I just wanted to know, what are sort of the key components of self-directed learning? So maybe not all the components, but just maybe some of the few major ones that you think you should be highlighted the most.
Sure. So typically for a company is going to have their salespeople train and learn. Typically what ends up happening is you'll have someone in either HR or someone that's a manager, and that person is going to decide what needs to be learned, when is it going to be learned, how is it going to be learned, how are we testing it. The materials are going to be standardized. So basically everybody comes in a room and they all learn the same thing. They don't really have a say. So they just come in, they learn. And so as a salesperson, when you come in to an environment like that, you might come in and you're like, I did the Rainmakers program. I already know how to build rapport. I know how to ask these questions. I know how to do this. And so now you're going through this training that you've already mastered. And so now you feel like it's kind of attacking your competence. And you're like, why am I here? I could be out making money. I could be out doing all these other things. So that's what we're typically seeing, is that when you have this standardized mandatory process, the salespeople come in and they're like, what is this? And then they're not even able to listen when they hear something that's new, because they're already checked out, because they're very busy. They want to be talking to the customers, customer facing. So that's the traditional type of approach, where management, the locus of control of training is for managers. So like the managers are 100% in control. But when it comes to selling, the salespeople actually have a lot more information that managers don't have. Like the salespeople know exactly what's happening with customers currently. They're in there. They know what's working for them, what's not. They know what they know. They may not know what they don't know yet, but they know at least what they know. So if the salespeople can have a little bit of a say in what's being learned, how it's learned, how they'll be tested on it, or when they're going to actually learn it, then they're much more motivated. So like, for instance, imagine your boss tells you, hey, you have to go learn how to play golf because I'm going to have you meeting with several clients and you're going to be on the golf course. Then you'd say, okay, all right, well, now I have to go do this. You may not even want to do that, but you have to go take the lessons because your manager told you. Now that's going to be much different if you were out there and you were noticing that your clients are all playing golf and you're like, oh my gosh, this is where the deals are happening on the golf course. I need to start golfing with these people. And then you're like, but I don't know how to golf. I need to go take a few lessons so that way I'm ready. I'll invite them to go play golf at the end of the month. Let me see if I can get in like 5 or 10 lessons before then so that I don't embarrass myself. And so now that you made that decision and you realize that that's what was needed, you're going to be so much more motivated in order to learn that, because you know that that is going to lead to an outcome that's important to you, versus your boss just saying like, you need to learn this because it's important, right? So there's that motivation because now the locus of control of training is on you and you've discovered that this is what's needed. So for organizations, giving control of learning to the salespeople, to give them autonomy, give them access to resources or give them some budget to go learn what it is that they think that they should learn to be successful, can make a really big difference for a company and the success of the salesperson.
Yeah.
That's a very, very interesting, I think, perspective. And I just wonder how difficult that is going to be, implemented when the finance department wants to see what is the return on investment. Like, how do you know that your salesperson is going to spend it in the right place? And when you have the control, when the salespeople have the control, I feel like it's probably more, it's harder to manage and oversee and control that. So, but I think it's a very interesting perspective.
Well, and you have different things, right? So like you can have, the company can have access to like libraries of databases where you can go in and you can figure out what you want to study and then you can just select that. Or you can go out on your own and do these things and you can pay for some things yourself. Or you can have programs where people would say, okay, here are the resources that I'd like to have access to because I want to learn this, and here's what's important. Here's what I think I'm going to get out of it, right? So they would basically put a proposal in, and a manager would just oversee that learning project. But I can tell you that when I teach in the MBA program here, and I have my students complete a self-directed learning project, it is harder to manage that. They're not just taking a multiple choice test. Like I have to actually meet and see how things are happening and give them guidance on that. But I will say that my students, whenever they do these projects, they're all working full time. Most of them end up getting a raise at work, a promotion at work, because they did that self-directed learning project. Wow. So there is for sure, and you do see the results, but it's scary when you're giving up some of that autonomy. You're giving them the autonomy to choose, like you said, is managing that, and like, how do you know, is this a return on investment that you are getting, right? So
how do you measure success as a professor? Is it the grades that your students get, or is it more of a response that you get back from your students?
Well, the grades are mastery. So Rainmakers makes it very easy to measure because I can see how hard my students are working. And then I can also see, okay, you've done 100 role plays, but you're not getting any better. You're using the same script over and over again to try to get a different result. Isn't that kind of not productive, not a good use of your time? So yes, I can look at the data and I can see, are you actually getting better at a thing and how hard are you working at this? But then also when I had class yesterday, one of my students stayed in at the end of class and she said, thank you for pushing me to go to this event at the beginning of the semester. I went to the launch party and I just got a job offer from one of the companies that I talked to during the party. So when they have this like epiphany of, oh my gosh, I have an opportunity here and they take advantage of it, that makes me feel very happy. Or like students will come back to a homecoming, like an alumni event, and they'll say, it's been 2 years or it's been 5 years and I'm still using the things that we learned in class. Or they might contact me and see, can I come sit in on the class? Our company isn't doing any training and I want to have a refresher course in this. And so they'll ask, different things. So that just makes me feel good that it's not just, they don't feel like it's busy work, that they're actually doing something that's going to be useful for them.
Yeah. And how do you maintain a good work-life balance as a professor? Because I know you said that you sort of, there's always things to do. You have like a list of things that you can research or whatever, but it's also obviously very important to, your mom, your family. How do you maintain that work-life balance?
That's a really good question. I'm working on it right now. I don't do a great job. I know back in 2015, I was doing a terrible job of it and I wasn't taking care of my health. I would sit at the computer for like 18 or 20 hours a day. And I ended up having an emergency back surgery after, finally hurting my back when I was 20. Then I had a couple back surgeries because I just wasn't exercising. I wasn't eating right. I was too stressed out. So now I've tried to prioritize exercise. So I try to make sure that I'm eating healthy and I'm exercising, at least a few times a week. And I'm trying to take more time at key time intervals to make sure that my family feels supported. So like last night they had a Festival of Lights event and I was so tired. I went home and the last thing I wanted to do was like get everybody and come back to the university to do the celebration. So I'm doing things sometimes that I don't really feel like, just because I need to make sure like everybody's buckets are filled. So it's like there's a health bucket, there's a wellness bucket, there's a family bucket, there's a work bucket. And so you have to kind of balance them and make sure you're not putting everything into work, because then there's nothing left for your health and your family at the end of the day. So I'm still working on it. I don't have it figured out yet, but I'm doing better than I was.
How do you use sales in these negotiation processes when you're trying to, negotiate between all of the different aspects of your life?
Well, it's funny. I use it with my kids, like my family, all the time. If my kids are upset about something, right, because there's 3 of them, and they always think that life is not fair. And so I try to use those objection handling techniques, right? Try to clarify, like really understand them. And then that way they feel like they've been heard, which is huge. If that's the reason that arguments continue over and over and over years or decades, right? Because the people feel like they've never really been heard and understood. And so they keep saying the same things over so that eventually someone hears them and understands their standpoint. So I try to use that so they feel like I actually get it and that I care, at least, even if I can't solve it for them. And then I just try to, use the discovery to ask the questions to make sure that I know what they want, so that when I give them some option, that I can make sure that the option includes whatever they want. Like, so for instance, last night, I wanted to come here. We always take pictures by the trees and, it's a lot of fun. And it's like every year I have these pictures of them growing, but they don't care about that. Like, they're like, but they do care about cookies and hot chocolate with marshmallows. So I'm like, we can go to this event again. And so it's like, you got to ask the right questions and know what drives them. So that way I can get everybody on board to be happy about what we're about to go do, so everybody has a better attitude. So yeah, using that all the time.
And how do you, I mean, how important is it to be open-minded in the sales profession? Because you're dealing with a lot of different people, and you're also dealing with a lot of different cultures,
especially in the States.
Yeah, in this ever increasing, interconnected world, we're always meeting people from different cultures. How important is it to be open-minded in your profession?
Oh, I mean, when it comes to sales, I think it's one of the most important things. That's why I teach adaptability, and we do improv training, because you always have to be open and you have to be listening. If you're closed off, or if you're judgmental, or if you're making assumptions, it's just going to prevent you from hearing what the person's actually saying, what they're trying to communicate. Usually somebody wants to buy something and they're giving you their purchase requirements through objections or whatever it is. So if you're closed off, then you're not going to listen. You think, oh, I already know what that person wants. Or if you think you know everything, then you're not even going to listen to new information. But right now, everything's changing so fast. There's new regulations, there's new technology, there's new companies every day that are popping up. So companies have to constantly innovate and change and adapt. And the only way that you can start that process is being open and knowing, even if I'm the leader today, tomorrow I can get knocked down. And so I have to constantly be listening and being open to new information. Yeah.
I think one thing that you mentioned was incredibly important and interesting, how they give their purchase requirements through objections. Until I think we've gone through sales classes or sales training, we have had this idea of objections being a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But what would your advice be to people that haven't had that sort of training? How do you overcome objections, or how do you look at objections? Not necessarily just in sales as a field, but it's just trying to sell in a personal way or in your personal life. Sure.
I think it's about mindset. So when we're getting pushback from somebody and they're like, well, wait, what about this? Our natural instinct is to be defensive, right? And so we have to shift our mindset away from being defensive and instead seeing this as a gift or an opportunity, because someone is trying to help us understand them, understand what they need, understand what they want. They're communicating. If they don't care, then they'll just be like, yeah, that sounds great. And then they'll never buy. And then they're just going to perpetually waste our time just forever. It'll always be wasted because they're like, oh yeah, no, it sounds good. Yeah, no, yeah, let's meet. And then you're going to keep wasting your time meeting with them and they're never going to do it. The people that care are like, I don't know. Are you sure you can get this to us by Tuesday? And then our natural reaction is like, of course we can. Right. But we're missing an opportunity there. So if somebody is like, are you sure you can get that by Tuesday? Then you're like, what's important about Tuesday? Like, what's happening on Tuesday that you need this? Right. And then this opens up a whole field of questions that you can ask to really understand exactly what they need. And if you can use those objections to help to get your buyer to open up, or whoever it is, your significant other, to open up and say what's really bothering them or what's driving that thing that they need it. Maybe they had a bad experience and, they were promised to get something at a certain time. It didn't come. And because of that, they lost their job or they lost their promotion or it ruined their day somehow, right? If you can start to understand that, you understand the person. If the person feels like they've been heard and that you understand them, now they trust you because you get them. And so now they know that you at least know what their interest is, and hopefully you have their best interest in mind. So it's all about helping someone to tell you what they want or what they need. And it can work in anything. It doesn't have to be just in sales. It can be in hostage negotiation. It could be in, the interview. It can be in a group project. Those skills can help you, because some people don't tell you what they want just in discovery. It has to wait till you get to, the objection part of it. Mm-hmm. But just always know when you're getting pushback, instead of being defensive, it's an opportunity. Think about it as a gift someone is giving you. It's feedback somehow. It's helping you understand them. And if you shift your mind that way, you're going to be so much happier. You're not going to be like, oh, why is this person so awful? You're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is actually really helpful information. We're closer to making this thing work. We're closer to resolving our conflict. We're closer to making the sale. We're closer to, getting me into this job that I want to get into.
What would you say is the hardest part about your job?
About my job? Grading. I hate grading. I do. I don't like it at all. That's probably the worst part. The paperwork that you have to do, or like in research, the reviewer comments and responding to them. Ugh. Awful.
Do you think grading is, maybe a little bit of a weird question, but do you think grading is necessary?
I mean, if you don't grade, then what's going to get your students to do the work, right? Yeah. I mean, some students, if you don't grade, they'll do the work. But a lot of students need to have that grade to make sure they're doing the work the best that they can, right? Because we have a tendency to say like, well, the professor doesn't take attendance, so I can miss that class and it's not going to be too bad, or this assignment isn't graded, so I'm just going to like do the bare minimum, right? So then it's like, if it's graded, then that there's more weight to it and you have to focus on it.
Yeah. Do you think you would work if we didn't have grades?
That's the thing. If grading wasn't a thing, then maybe it would sort of extract the more self-directed learners, the ones that are more open to self-directed learning quicker.
But I think it still happens that way. I mean, you still can see who are the self-directed learners, and they don't just do the bare minimum, but go above and beyond. Or maybe that's also just perfectionism and not necessarily self-directed learning. But
yeah. Well, it's interesting. You could think of grades as in getting paid for work that's done. So for students, their grade is their compensation, I guess, is like a reflection of how well they worked. And when you're in a job, then you get paid money based on your performance. If you're in sales, then you get paid more for that. What's interesting is there's a lot of things that I do for free, but there's a lot of things also that I would not be willing to do unless I got paid. Like, I'm probably not going to work on a big consulting project for a company just because it's interesting, because it takes time away from my family and I have to justify that. Right. And so I think that's kind of the same with schoolwork. Is you may not be passionate about taking that history exam. So you're going to have something, it's like you can't graduate without taking that class. You may not always be completely passionate and motivated about everything that you're doing. So I think that helps. But, everybody can become more passionate about it. Even if you hate something, you can find a way to like gamify it to make it more interesting so that you can get through it and be a little bit happier about it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So if you had to attribute your success to one thing, what would it be?
Oh my gosh.
That's good.
All my whole life, I've always wanted to try things, and I haven't been good at everything that I've done, and I don't get terribly embarrassed when I'm terrible at something. So I could be really bad and I'll just keep trying so that I can master it. Whereas there's a lot of people that you try something and you're like, oh, no, I'm not good at this. Like, this is not for me. And then they'll just give up within the first 5 minutes because they don't want to be embarrassed, or they don't want to waste their time doing something if they're not really good at it. So I would say that's probably the defining factor of my success, is that I will just keep trying until I get it right. And it's okay if I'm embarrassed, or I just won't be embarrassed in front of people. Like, I just try a lot. I work hard, and it's okay if I look silly.
Yeah, I really, really like that.
Yeah,
I really like that.
I'm pretty sure I fall into the embarrassed category. So as our bonus question that we also ask all of our guests as our 11th question, sort of. So if there's one piece of advice that you could give to your 20-year-old self, what would it be?
Oh, wow. My 20-year-old self. That's a good question. Well, when I was 20, I was having my back injury. So I would probably just say, keep a positive attitude. Just keep your head up and keep working hard. Things are going to work out for you, so you don't have to stress. So I would just say, keep working hard.
Yeah.
With a positive attitude.
That's great.
And
So
grow
I
your
think-
network. I think that's
Yeah.
that's a really
I'm-
big thing.
I am now very much realizing how important it is to grow your network. And the thing is, I've moved around a lot, and part of my reason for wanting to stay here in Germany and sort of establish myself is building that network. And network doesn't necessarily mean you have to stay in one place, but I just find it's. I want to start growing some roots, and I feel like I've never been able to. So, I especially appreciate that growing the network.
Joshua is so actively growing his network right now. The LinkedIn thinks that he's a bot for sending so many requests.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, when I was 20, I didn't have a tool like that. LinkedIn wasn't even a thing. Like Facebook didn't even exist back then. Like that's how old I am is, we called people on the phone, and most people didn't even really have cell phones yet. Some did. They were catching on, but there were a lot of people that still didn't have them. So LinkedIn is such a huge resource to be able to connect. And
For sure.
I would just say on LinkedIn, just make sure that you have the messages, the trail of messages. So that way later when you're looking for someone that's going to help you and they pull up your conversation, they're like, oh, who's this person? Oh, I have messages. That whatever that message is, it's positioning you the way that you want to be positioned. So are you a hard worker? Are you a leader? Are you kind? Are you somebody that's, very helpful? Are you smart in a certain area, knowledgeable in a certain area? You have certain skills, use LinkedIn to create that trusted advisor position. So that way when someone sees you, they're like, oh, I know that. I trust that person.
Yeah.
Thank you. We got a bonus advice at the end.
Yeah, very interesting.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Boyer, for taking some time out of your very busy schedule and coming.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
it's
thank
great.
you. You all are doing such a great job. I'm so impressed that you even have time to do this on top of 13 classes. It's amazing. I mean, anybody who's watching this, you've got to connect with these folks because they are the leaders of tomorrow. And I mean, whether it's a company, other students, faculty, you got to do it. You have to.
Thank you.
I mean, you're taking
Thank
time
you.
creating this podcast on top of everything else. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's sort of ties back to your doing things and not being embarrassed about it. Just keep trying, and I hope this, for me personally, I hope this sort of has a domino effect in my personal life. Keep trying new things and
hopefully maybe in other people's lives.
Yeah.
I love it. No, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, if you ever come over to Rhode Island, come visit me.
Oh,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah.
We would
Or in
love
Costa
to.
Rica.
Or
Okay.
Costa Rica,
Yes.
we're there at
Yeah.
the same time.
And the same for Germany. If you're ever in Germany, if you're ever in Nuremberg,
Yeah.
bring your people.
Perfect.
Yeah. We don't have zip lines over the jungle, but
We have Oktoberfest though.
Yeah.
I think zip lines are more interesting, but we offer what we have, right?
Exactly. No, Germany is amazing. I had
It
a
is.
German woman on the track team, so she taught me wie geht's. That's what I know.
It's very good. Very good. It's already better than Edmond's German.
After 2 years of the German classes.
yeah.
Dr. Boyer, thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice rest of your day.
Good luck. Let me know if there's anything you all need. You can reach out to me. I'm here for you.